Welcome to another episode of Out Loud and Laughing. Get ready. It's Bryan and Jon, two gay cousins having big talks and even bigger laughs. Join us. Let's see what they're up to. It's Out Loud and Laughing. Hey.
Hello, hello.
Welcome to another episode
of Out Loud
and Laughing.
Yeah, question
Are we
mark.
doing this? We've been doing this.
We are doing this. How are you, Jon?
We are good. I am showing up for myself. I am showing up for this. I am showing up for life. I am just showing up. How are you?
That is all we can do.
Ooh,
I'm good.
Funny these days.
I know. I'm a little tired. We had some parents over last night, and they didn't leave till like 10, which is late. So, yeah, struggling. But I'm good. How about you?
I went to bed late last night too, like 2 a.m.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
I couldn't sleep. My mind was a little bit like on some things, when your mind gets on things.
Oh,
and so I was just watching my show.
Yeah.
Like the one show that everybody has that, you put on to be mindless and sort of get through your moments.
What show is your show?
Friends.
Oh, that's not bad at all. You're such an old school binger, though.
I'm a binger. I'm an old school binger.
Like, I feel like you enjoy watching old episodes of Will and Grace, old episodes of Friends, all those things where I don't really go back like that. I don't really do that.
Do you want to hear a fun fact? That's actually they say that's a, like not a symptom, but like a byproduct of people with like ADHD to like watch things that are like super familiar to them because it just brings comfort and familiarity to them. They don't have to like think too much. Isn't that funny?
I think that makes sense though.
Yeah, it's just one of the many fun things. Yeah, so I'm tired too. I'm just agreeing with you. I'm also tired. I stayed up way too late last night. What were the kids up with you guys late as well? Like, what did it look like in your house?
Yeah. So everyone was just up. It was chaos. There was a mess everywhere. People were, the kids were just like literally we found an empty tissue box. And then this morning we realized that all the tissues were out in the basement. So it was just one of those things where it's like, whenever they're quiet and the adults are able to have a conversation, it's enjoyable in the moment, but you realize the ramifications of that silence, and how rowdy they're being. But it was fun. They had a good time. What are you gonna do?
The risk versus the reward in this case didn't feel that far off.
I agree.
I want to know what they were doing with the tissues. That's all I was going to say. I was just going to say the real question is, what were they actually doing with the tissues? Like, were they throwing them in some sort of like parade? Like, I have questions. I'm going to have to.
I feel like you don't want to know, so we don't even look at the cameras.
So it's so funny about this is that like that is 3 children and 4 adults. And I'm one person. It is just one person in Brody over here. And last night, between me binging Friends, trying to dismantle Christmas from my house because I figured February 14th is way late to have Christmas up, and ordering food for myself and all the other things, my house looks like it had 3 children and 4 adults living in it. And it was just me. So at least you have an excuse.
That's so true.
You know how they say paybacks are a bitch. No, I'm just kidding. I want to interview you. You interviewed me, and I wanted to sort of like spotlight you and give our viewers and our followers and even me an opportunity to sort of lean in and ask you some questions that I've not had the opportunity to ask you before. Now, I will say, I did want to put sort of a wrapper around this and, seeing that like we live the biggest difference of our lives is, sort of myself sort of in my 40s figuring it out in terms of like dating and getting back out there, whereas you now have a little bit over a decade of a marriage behind you. You now have children under your belt, literally all the time under your belt, children. And I wanted to sort of go down that journey with you, if that's okay.
Yes, I'm nervous, but I'm here. Yeah, let's do it. Ask me some questions. I'm happy to answer.
I'm hearing yes and, so I'm gonna just move forward with it. Let's start at the beginning. Let's start about you and Adam. I know that you guys have had sort of a journey through meeting and getting married. Along the way, what would you say? And then there's sort of this big conversation around gay marriage generally.
Sure.
And I think it's really important that we sort of start putting more stories out into the world. And so I was curious, from your perspective, what myths about gay marriage do you think people assume, but are totally false? Right.
Yeah. Yeah. I think it's a good question. I think, and I have thought about it a little bit. Gay marriage hasn't been around for that long, right? Like legally, right? We've always been, putting ourselves in unions and like forming like partnerships, but obviously marriage hasn't been around for that long, and not a joke, but it may not be around for a long time either, given what's happening. But I think it's interesting how society has viewed gay marriage and how they've just taken the perspective of a gay person and put that into a marriage. And what does that mean? I guess how to best put it is like a lot of people think that gay marriages are quote unquote messy and open and, not monogamous and all of that. And I feel like that's a myth. I feel like my marriage is kind of no different than any like hetero relationship in that, we fight, it's boring, we have a closed marriage. And so for us, that works. I don't think it's that different. Now, no shade to any marriage that needs to have a different construct, like having it open or doing other things or having a third, like whatever that looks like for you makes sense. But I think for me, that doesn't make sense right now in our relationship. And I feel like society has given this perception that it should be messy, right? And that's just not our relationship.
Yeah, and I agree. I think that there are so many different styles of relationships, and totally whichever one works for you. But I also want to double down on, you and I being so close and sort of having a lot of the same
Yeah.
upbringing. We had a really enjoyable, as much as we talk about the negative, we had a really enjoyable upbringing in sort of the security that was offered by our parents being in a monogamous relationship and being able to sort of offer that safety net around us. And so with that, and I know, having that sort of similarity and that lens together, I too share sort of a lot of those same beliefs and ideals, right?
Yeah.
And that kind of a marriage and that sort of a union. But with that, like there's sort of also this ideal and dream about like the family unit as well. And I think that like you've always sort of carried that beacon, and so like you have also generated that safety in that marriage for your family, for your children that you've had, and I sort of want to like go into that foray with you too and say, not only are you dispelling sort of these myths about what people's perceptions are around marriage and same-sex marriage, but like I wanted to ask you sort of the same question, right? Like, what are some myths that you can bust around being a gay parent? Like, this is not just, a lot of yeah. We'll go with that. What are some myths that you can bust about being a gay parent?
So yeah, a good question. So myths about being a gay parent. That's a I haven't really thought about this question, to be honest. I think it's a really good question, and it does deserve some self reflection on like what does that mean? I think myths about being a gay parent. I'm a little
Do you
stumped on this one,
feel? Do
John.
you
To be
feel?
honest,
Yeah. Let's talk through it together. Do you feel? Do you feel like you have to like act differently in the world? Do you have to show up differently? Do you feel like you have to put in more effort to be a gay parent just to prove that you're adequate? Like, does that feeling ever come up for you?
I feel like one of the interesting things about being like a same sex couple who are raising kids is a lot of the societal norms of a female mother and then a male father. I feel like I have to take on both roles. And Adam, same thing, right? There's not, I wouldn't call it a luxury, but what has society has kind of dictated.
Like an
And I feel
afforded.
like, yeah, and I feel like some of the stuff that we have to like do is kind of taking on both roles, right? Like for example, like I remember as a kid growing up, if I had a nightmare, my mom was the first one in the room, right? It was like, it felt like a motherly thing to do, to comfort your child in the middle of the night when they're having a nightmare. We don't have a motherly figure or person like mother, right? So it's us coming up in the middle of the night doing that. And then on the same token, like we're also teaching them how to fix things and doing those so I just feel like we kind of take
When
on
you say
both.
fake things, do you mean like self-soothe? Or what do you mean?
Yeah, I just feel like the emotional part, like when you think about when you were growing up, and we have the shared experience, a lot of the emotional being taken care of, being like having like emotion conversations about love and stuff was with our mom.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
Very much in
so
our culture, yeah, that was the case.
exactly. So I feel like there's that aspect of it. I also feel like, when I think about the myths about gay parents, I think about like dads that I see today who are in our circle in hetero relationships. I don't see a huge difference. I feel like that's not necessarily a norm for, or that's not something that's like specific to a gay couple. I see a lot of men now who are very like emotional fathers, like who are just letting their guard down and being with their child, hugging them, saying they love them. So I feel like that's been a transformation over the last generation from our parents to us. When I look back on like who I am as a parent now versus our parents, or like not even just our parents, just parents overall, I feel like back in our day in the 80s and 90s, like it was very much like dad did this and mom did this, right? And luckily society has moved forward where now we've moved away from mom and dad and we're all just parents and we're all trying to figure it out and we're all trying to love our kids and give them the best that we can. And there's no more swim lanes. And in our household, that's definitely a myth that people can maybe think, because something that people have asked us before is like, oh, well, who's the mom? Which is slightly offensive.
I was just gonna ask you, how do you handle awkward questions like that? With like, have the kids ever come up to you and said, why isn't there a mommy here? Or, I'm sure that there's some stories around there that you can share with us.
Yeah, I think so we've definitely have gotten questions before, right? Like we always like where's the mom? Like we were just on vacation. And so we were in this Caribbean island and we were going through customs. And it was me and Adam and the two kids and we had all our passports, everything was all our paperwork's there, everything. And she was like looking at it and she took a while and I was like, is there a problem? And she was like, well, where's the mom? And again, I think to your earlier question, like, okay, it was like, well, they don't have a mom. They have two dads.
Hold on, give me a
And
moment on that one. I didn't even know you had like those things are like the moments that you're just used to, probably just like plowing through, but like hearing that and like thinking about that like actually like gave me like an emotional reaction. Like that is
yeah. And I try to put myself in a place first of education, and I never want to think that someone's coming from a place of hate. That's where I always put my first, like myself, right? Because I don't want to think anyone's ill intent when they say something like that, because yes, it's ignorant, but it's also maybe just uneducated, and that's fine, right? But it was after we educated her and told her, like, nope, there's no mom. There's just, and she's like, okay, but I don't see a mom here. So where's their mom? And then that's where I started to lose. I was like, lady, they don't have a mom. They have two dads. And like, we were very stern with her. And it's hard because it was also like, it was customs, right? But she ended up like, after a minute was like, oh, okay, here you go. And let us through. But that stuff happens a lot, right? I think the the nice thing about what Adam and I have done for our life is we moved ourselves to a neighborhood and a community that is very inclusive, very diverse, very equitable, all the things that you can't say anymore. But it was important to us, right? Because our neighborhood has all colors, it has all kinds of relationships and everything. So even in Ollie's class alone, he has two friends and they both have two sets of moms. Right. So
right.
Ollie already sees that some people have two moms, some people have two dads, and then we have plenty of friends that are mom and dad, right? So our kids constantly see that all families are built differently. And Adam and I have constantly made it a point to make it a conversation. Like we talk about, like some kids are lucky to have two dads. Some kids are also lucky to have two moms, and some kids are lucky to have a mom and dad. And all families are different, but as long as there's love in the household and we all love each other, then it's a happy family. And they seem to have grasped onto that concept, especially only being 3 and 5 at this point. So that's been good. But I think to the root of your question though, there's going to be more and more conversations to be had because society is not nice, and our kids are unfortunately going to find that person or two that really questions their place in the world and why they are quote unquote their family looks different. I'm hoping that they won't see that as much because the world has shifted somewhat and families now aren't the traditional mom dad. But I don't know. It scares me, to be honest. It really does.
Yeah, I think where the conversation's heading is a little bit concerning. My next question was going to be around. I mean, maybe we can support it with. Maybe we could use some of the what's going on in today's world to
Yeah.
support this next question if you want to go there. But it was just around like the difference, right? Like, what's the difference between then like being a straight dad versus a gay dad? Like, I'm sitting here thinking to myself, like a straight dad, like running his family through customs isn't going to have to work. He's going to be worried more about like a backpack strap getting caught on a stroller and not have to worry about just wheeling his family through. And here you are having to worry about that and proving the fact that like these are your children. It's like you have the right documentation, you've gone through the processes. So what else? Like, what other things come to mind for you? And like, it could be like about this conversation that's happening in our country. Like that, those are things that they don't have to wake up with this morning.
I think it's interesting because, like I think I kind of alluded to it earlier, was there's a difference between dad now and dad in the 90s. So I think there's a huge difference between that from a gay dad to a straight dad.
Like Rosie O'Donnell's a great dad.
I don't know why when you said Rosie O'Donnell, Roseanne popped in my head, and I was like, "Ooh!" Freaked out.
Yeah, she know the new show. I don't want to promote it, but like, what is she still doing?
I don't know. I agree. But I think it's again going back to the community that we built for ourselves. I don't see a huge difference in how I parent my kids versus a straight dad. But I think to your point, the things that I might have to think about are slightly different on making sure I constantly need to anticipate something and be ready to answer a question or educate someone where a straight dad doesn't necessarily have to do that. What I will say though is what I've seen from a lot of straight dads, especially in our community, is the responsibility that they do carry though. And they also they do a good job.
You mean Maplewood?
Yeah, the community that we built in Maplewood, again, it's a very inclusive like area. And I think the responsibility that I've seen some straight dads carry is educating their child on all families look different as well. And I've seen that firsthand, which is actually really beautiful to see, to see straight dads, educate their child, but also embrace us, right? Like I'm going camping in a couple of months with 3 other dads, right? They're all straight. But I'm included. And I think that's been probably the toughest thing that I think any gay person had to deal with growing up is just not feeling included, and trying to find our place. And so because I've surrounded myself with this open-minded community who I wouldn't even say it open-minded, like they just don't give a shit, right? They're just like, right. You are our dad and come camping. Right. Like, right. And that's how it should be. Like, I don't know why people overthink like a family unit and how it has to be a certain way and then fight to destroy our family unit. Like that just doesn't make sense to me. And so I don't feel different in this world that I've built.
Yeah. You touched on something where it was like, I'm trying to find find relatability. And you just said like, that's just sort of like comes with the territory of being a gay man, right? Like, whereas your struggles on a day-to-day are, around, protecting your family and creating that safety unit for your kids. Mine still is very much protecting like what a gay man in 2025 looks like, who still believes in sort of like dating, yeah. Like, in sort of in these similar ways. But bringing it back to you and sort of like bringing the spotlight back to you, and I think that it still sort of like goes along with what we're discussing here is then if we can separate sort of like what makes you feel different
Yeah.
from sort of your straight counterparts who sort of carry the same capes, wear the same capes that you wear.
Yeah.
I will ask: has being a parent and sort of like building this unit, right? You and Adam, the two kids, like what we traditionally known as a very a heteronormative sort of design, right? Um, do you feel like there's been any of your gay identity sort of removed or challenged? How do you personally identify with yourself having sort of come up and building all of this, like taking a step and looking back? Like, how, like, has there been
Yeah.
any sort of like reconciling or thoughts there?
Um, I don't know if necessarily like reconcile or anything, but I think that there's obviously been like a massive shift in me as a gay man being single, or even with Adam and no kids, to transforming into a parent. I think it, there's obviously a shift, and I don't think this is s- special to a gay parent, but I think the
More
shift
like a
is
human
that
experience.
well, I just think you completely step away from only worrying about yourself, right? And I feel like that's hard. That's hard to go from I care about me, I need to worry about me, to now I have to put myself second or third or fourth in some cases, right? Because you want to support your partner, you want to support your two kids, and it's hard. So I think that was the biggest thing, especially as a gay man. Like, I loved my 20s, right? Like, very selfish, did all the things, had a lot of fun, didn't have to worry about anyone or anything, and now I have to. And that's a huge shift in like God, I can't go out to a bar with friends anymore, right? Like, or and if I do, I have to like prepare, and Adam needs to be home, or we need to get a babysitter, and then you know it takes planning, right? And so it takes planning to have that impromptu fun that we used to have all the time. So I think that's one of the biggest shifts. It's just all of a sudden realizing, like, you know, okay, cool, this is no longer just about me.
Um, I love that. There's a lot of growing up in that, like, you know, to have to take on the responsibility of caring for another life, you really need to have learned to care for yourself. I would disagree with you. I'm going to challenge you. I would disagree with you to say that you have to learn how to put yourself second, because I think that you do such a good job of putting yourself first so that you can show up so amazingly for the kids. I mean, you're at the gym at 4 or 5 in the morning. You're there for the kids
Yeah,
when they wake up in the morning. You're already sort of taking care of yourself. You've chosen yourself so that you can be better for the kids. And so, you know, we talked about this in another podcast about that reminder from the airline, right? Where it was like, when
put
the
your mask
mask
on
falls,
first.
put your mask on first. I
Yeah.
see you acting doing that, and I know it's because you're such a wonderful, kind, loving, humble human being that you're going to say what you just said. But I do want to stop you to say, I see you taking care of yourself first, and I think that that's a really important reminder for all of us.
But that's an interesting like perception of it, because I do take care of myself, definitely, and I appreciate you like flagging that, but I have to do it around them, right?
Yeah,
So it's
yeah,
still
it
not about
changes.
me. Like, if I would not have gone to the gym at 4 a.m. ever, but now I have to. So as much as like I am taking care of myself, I'm taking care of myself because I'm finding the time to do it. And it's not easy, but yeah, I agree. I think we have to be as close to our best selves as we can to be able to take care of other people. So I agree.
So I'm going to sort of like go a little bit out of order here because I want to keep the
I
conversation
like
going. I
that.
love this,
Keep me
and
on my toes.
well, I'm gonna keep it. Well, it's keeping me on my toes. Actually, like I am Black Swan over here, and I am on point, like quite
Yes.
literally. Um, but like I really like this idea of like comparing now what life was like versus what life is.
Hmm.
And so you know, let's get real here. Was one thing about, or what are things about your pre-dad life that you secretly miss the most? Things that you wouldn't even tell
I
Adam.
think. Yeah. I honestly I think it's just the freedom element,
Yeah.
right? I think there's just a level of like constant planning and constantly having to think through like, does this work with the schedule? before kids, like if I want to go on a work trip or if Adam and I wanted to book a vacation, like we have to check in or like figure out like anything. Like it was like, cool, we just do it. Right. And now it's just, there's so much work that goes into like trying to plan things to the point where you just don't want to do it then because there's just so much more work. So I do miss that freedom aspect that you kind of get when you don't have kids. Like if you wanted to hop on a plane today, John, to go and come to New York and visit me, you could. You have to figure out a couple of things, right? You have a dog and all that, so that you definitely have responsibilities.
No, you're absolutely spot on. The freedom is so important, the autonomy, and like I can only imagine how like losing that can feel overwhelming when there's no sort of like break, right? When it's so constant and on all the time, it can almost seem inundating. But do you think? But I feel like you and Adam like listen and give each other sort of space and time. You know, I
100%. I think if I want to do something, or if Adam wants to do something, we're really supportive of it, right? I don't think that's not a problem. But it just, again, it goes back just, it takes more work to kind of
okay.
get things done and do things.
So let's get you in the mind space then of if you didn't have to plan anything and it was
Yeah.
just Bryan and you knew that Adam, Mackenzie, and Oliver, which would never not exist, but they're taken care of and they're safe out in sort of some
Yes.
ether, whatever. It's just Bryan. What is
Okay.
Bryan doing? What is Bryan doing? He wakes up in the morning. He has the day to himself. What is Bryan doing today?
Today. Amazing. I love this question. I love this question because it's probably not the answer you're going to hear or like expect. I would do probably nothing. And I say that because,
That tracks.
yeah, well, as much as we're doing things all the time to our earlier question, to myself, for the kids, for Adam, for work, for everything, if you give me a day, I need to take that day to recharge, right? And so I'm not going to the beach. I'm not going to the mall. I'm not running errands. I'm sitting on that couch and I'm watching a show, which, by the way, and an answer from earlier, I'm definitely watching Love is Blind on Netflix right now. It is some shitty TV and I love it. And so honestly, like that's probably what I would do is nothing, right? And that might waste the day away, but that's probably okay, you know?
That's okay. Okay, so let's do a hot take. I love that answer. I think it's so important that we stay mindful of like knowing that sometimes taking care of ourselves means
Yeah.
stopping completely.
Just stop. Exactly.
So your day now is over. The kids barge to the door. Adam is back.
Yes.
Your bubble has been popped.
I start crying. Perfect.
Give us the dad hot take. Uh, what's something that you do as a dad that other parents might judge you for? Like they're just not on.
Oh.
What is it?
What would other parents potentially judge me for?
You're like, man, I was having such a good day, and now you like, so the kids triggered you, and you're like, oh, that's probably not the best parenting decision.
I
Or you're
mean,
at,
we definitely find ourselves yelling a lot, which we're trying to work on.
Mhm.
Because the one thing that me and Adam try to talk through is that they are only 3 and 5, so we definitely yell a lot. But one of the things that I have done, which is probably horrible, is our kids love sugar.
Yeah,
Which, I mean, you've been here, you've seen these kids. These kids will devour sugar. So my thing is, I don't mind giving my kids sugar for breakfast. Like if they want some cotton candy from their Valentine's candy, like have it, but have it for breakfast. And why do I mean that? Because after breakfast, they go to school.
yeah.
And so that energy is
girl,
not my problem.
girl, bye. That's great. What's
So,
like the craziest candy treat you've ever given them in the morning?
uh, oh man, and they've had
Cut.
it all, right? They've had cotton candy, they have Skittles. We haven't done like ice cream or like a full on like a dessert, but even like if it's their birthday and it's a weekday, we'll do a cake in the morning when they wake up, and they can have a slice of cake before school because it's their birthday. So nothing crazy, right? They're not doing like full on ice
Yeah.
cream sundaes, but
Can we kiki on the side real quick? Do you know about these Skittles that they're selling now that they're like microwave or exploded or deep fried or something? They are crunchy Skittles. I will buy them for you and
Oh, they're
send them. They're amazing.
dehydrated. Yes. Dehydrated
Dehydrated. Have you
Skittles.
seen these?
I've had them.
Obsessed. I hate Skittles regularly. I enjoy their crunchy cousin. Just saying.
Oh.
It's like us.
Am I the
All
regular
right.
Skittle and you're the crunchy cousin?
Oh, honey, don't you wish you were a crunchy cousin? Um, I, I think we've taken our. I think this has been such a great conversation for me. Thank you for sharing all of these amazing insights and vulnerabilities about your life.
Yeah. I think it's important to realize like we're all just figuring it out. We're all just parents at the end of the day. And like it's all this there are some differences for sure, but we're all just trying to survive. And so I give kudos to all the parents out there who are just every day just trying to do their best, and that's important. But I also just, big headline is teach your kids to be compassionate towards all types of families because, you're going to run into a Kenzie or Ollie, and your child could say the wrong thing if they're not educated on the fact that every family is special. So I'll leave it with that.
I love that. Thank you so much. I'm trying to fit a "Who's your daddy" joke in there, but that was just too pretty. I'm gonna leave it right there. Thank you, Brian. I love you so much.
The whole term daddy has evolved for me from the 20s being a gay man to now being one. So,
Hey,
who's your
ditto,
daddy?
and I don't even have kids, so.
Who's your daddy, John?
I love you. I'll talk to you later.
All right. Thanks, everyone. Chat soon.